With the likelihood recruitment from the Jiangnan district, Zhang Yi knew he had to control the situation by taking the initiative into his own hands as soon as possible. At this moment, Zhang Yi arrived at Emerald Waterside Base and was immediately warmly welcomed by Xing Tian. He brought dozens of his men to greet Zhang Yi. When Zhang Yi got out from his car, he raised his eyebrows when he saw this scene and asked with a smile, "So many people came to greet me. I am really a little flattered." Xing Tian was stunned for a moment, realizing that although Zhang Yi was so powerful, he was still on guard against him. He couldn't help but reply with a nervous smile, "After so many years, your cautious character has really not changed at all. But don't worry, I don't have the courage to fight you." As he said this, he walked up to Zhang Yi and asked curiously, "After all, your current strength is probably no less than that of Yuan Kongye back then, right?" Everyone in Tianhai City knew that Zhang Yi killed Yuan Kongye, so obviously, they thought that Zhang Yi absorbed Yuan Kongye's power, and his current strength had undoubtedly reached her level as well. Zhang Yi put his right hand in his pocket, sighed and said softly, "It's not as simple as you think. That battle, oh, let's not talk about it. Take me to see the investigation team first." If it were in the past, Zhang Yi wouldn't mind Xing Tian and the others thinking he was very strong. But now it's different. Currently, he is really strong, but he has to pretend not to be that strong. Zhang Yi doesn't want to be remembered by the Jiangnan district because of his strength. But he also knows that even if he explains it, Xing Tian may not believe it. So Zhang Yi only said half of the words and let Xing Tian think about it himself. As for whether he believes it or not, it's up to him. At the moment, the most important thing for Zhang Yi is to communicate with the investigation team first. Xing Tian smiled and said, "Come with me." He made way for Zhang Yi to walk past him, and then he followed Zhang Yi half a step behind. As Xing Tian followed, he said to Zhang Yi, "That battle was too tragic. Wei Dinghai died in the battle, and more than 90% of the mutants under our command were killed or injured. Even the investigation team, which was so strong, suffered very serious injuries. Old classmate, you will be the boss in Tianhai City in the future, and we all have to rely on you." Zhang Yi glanced at him and smiled faintly without any comment. He had no interest in expanding his power. After all, the effect of expanding power also meant that he had to manage more and more people and things, but there is no benefit at all. How could it compare to his freedom now? The two chatted casually on the way. Zhang Yi basically knew what Xing Tian meant by his words, but what he truly wanted to hear was the situation of the investigation team, to which Xing Tian did not dare to disclose, so all in all, he did not get any useful information. Soon, Zhang Yi came to the place where the investigation team was recuperating. This place is located in the underground shelter. It is a very high-level sanatorium. Although it is not as good as Zhang Yi's big villa, it is already the top treatment in the entire base. After directing Zhang Yi, Xing Tian left consciously. Opening the door, Zhang Yi's appearance made the atmosphere of the investigation team become a little solemn. Among the 6 people, some were examining him, while others had a hint of hostility in their eyes. Without a doubt, Wu Di, who had always had a problem with Zhang Yi, had the most vicious look in his eyes. He was also the first to greet Zhang Yi. "What are you doing here?" Zhang Yi looked at Wu Di. The guy's hair was all white, and the last battle had greatly damaged his vitality. But now when he looked at Zhang Yi, although he still looked unhappy, he was not as hostile as before. In the past, Zhang Yi never understood why this guy treated him so badly. Could it be that he was jealous because he was too handsome? Zhang Yi had this thought with an awkward expression. However, he still raised his eyelids slightly and said leisurely, "The battle is over. Can't I come to see the wounded? After all, we may have to work together in the future. If I am too indifferent, people will inevitably say that I am unkind and don't know how to sympathize with the team members." As soon as these words came out, almost everyone in the investigation team frowned. The phrase "sympathize with the team members" seems to imply that he was now the captain. Although some people in the investigation team are more welcoming to the idea of Zhang Yi as a member of the team, it did not mean that they were willing to accept a domineering person, even if Zhang Yi now has the power to be domineering. Wu Di was furious, pointing angrily at Zhang Yi and scolded, "What are you proud of? Just because you want to join our investigation team? Do you have the qualifications?" Zhang Yi glanced at him lightly, his eyes were calm, but there was a kind of condescending look. "Well, I did just solve the problem related to Yuan Kongye. Don't you think that's enough to qualify me?" This sentence choked Wu Di. When they fought Yuan Kongye, the investigation team didn't get any advantage, and even he himself almost died. If Zhang Yi wasn't there, they would have died in the battle. From this perspective, they all undoubtedly owed Zhang Yi a favor. But Wu Di was unwilling to admit this, so he turned his head to the side with a dark expression on his face. Seeing this, Zhang Yi's smile became even stronger and more condescending. He puffed out his chest as his eyes swept over everyone. After you go back, don't forget to explain the situation in Tianhai City to the top leaders of Jiangnan District, so that they know my contribution. Of course, I am also very sorry for the passing of Captain Bien Junwoo. If I have the opportunity, I hope to inherit his legacy, defend this land, and bring a harmonious and happy life to the people of the Jiangnan region. These words made everyone's scalp numb, and they suddenly felt goosebumps all over their bodies. This time, everyone's favorability towards Zhang Yi dropped even more seriously. At this moment, Zhang Yi spoke in an official tone, with a completely smug look on his face. Compared with the humble and cautious appearance when the investigation team first came to Tianhai City, he was completely different. Bailey Chongqing narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling a little unhappy, but he still forced a smile and said, "Don't worry, we will not forget your contribution. It's just that the matter of joining the investigation team has to be decided by the top management." Zhang Yi laughed and replied, "It's just one more process. Who else can do it but me?" In a flash, he came over and placed an arm around Bailey Chongqing's shoulders. "Brother Bailey, let's go out and have a chat. Some things are not suitable to be said to ordinary team members." When he said this, he did not forget to glance at the other people in the room. Everyone gnashed their teeth. If they hadn't considered that Zhang Yi's strength might have reached a level that they couldn't imagine, they would really come up and fight. Bailey Chongqing glanced at Zhang Yi, and in his heart he also wanted to test Zhang Yi's attitude. So he nodded and said with a smile, "Well, since you want to talk to me alone, I will accompany you." The two of them walked out of the room arm in arm. As soon as they left, the room exploded. Zhang Yi took Bailey Chongqing away from the team members' sanatorium. The two went to the next door and found a quiet room, which happened to be a billiard room for entertainment on weekdays. Zhang Yi leaned on the table and put away the arrogant smile on his face. His sharp eyes fell on Bailey Chongqing's face. "Brother Bailey, do you support me to be the captain?" Bailey Chongqing heard this, and a hidden dark light flashed in the depths of his eyes. With his arms leisurely folded, he replied calmly, "You have made such a great contribution. You will be chosen by the higher-ups without my support." Zhang Yi nodded. "That's right. As long as you report my contribution truthfully, and with my current strength, the higher-ups will definitely appoint me as the captain." Bailey Chongqing took a deep breath and sighed heavily. "Although I don't want to discourage you, this matter may not be as simple as you think. In the Jiangnan region, there are only 6 special investigation teams like ours. Each one is a team composed of the most elite mutants after layers of screening. Especially the selection of the captain is so strict that it is outrageous. Although you have made great contributions, you are a newcomer after all," Bailey Chongqing continued, scratching the back of his head with a simple smile on his face. "Of course, it's not impossible. I'm just afraid that your expectations are too high, so I'm giving you a heads up in advance." Zhang Yi smiled faintly. "That's really troublesome, and thank you for the warning, but I am confident that I can be your captain." Bailey Chongqing couldn't hold back his curiosity. He looked at Zhang Yi. "Zhang Yi, can I ask you a question? What is your current strength?" "It's only stronger than Bien Junwoo." Zhang Yi gave the answer directly before he finished speaking. Now he has a more powerful ability, which is no less than Bien Junwoo's Nirvana, and it is a perfect ability without side effects. So at this time, he has surpassed Bien Junwoo in terms of comprehensive combat power. Bailey Chongqing was stunned for a moment. Then an expression of, as expected, appeared on his face. He subconsciously clenched his fist, but soon loosened it. He looked at Zhang Yi and said calmly, "Perhaps you have now reached the level of an Epsilon mutant. In this case, you are indeed capable of becoming our captain." Epsilon mutants were no longer be guessed by common sense. So if Zhang Yi is in existence of this level, no matter how many problems he has, he is definitely qualified to be the captain. Zhang Yi thought about it with his arms folded. It shouldn't be that level yet. Bien Junwoo said that Delta is a watershed in the level of mutants. There was a very obvious difference in the middle, that is, whether or not they have the ability of co-devouring. However, the distinction between other levels is vague. Generally, the professional scientific institutions of the major forces themselves divide them according to the strength of their abilities. Otherwise, only mutants at the Epsilon level can judge the level of their abilities. But Zhang Yi judged based on his experience that he definitely could not reach that standard at this time. After all, Yuan Kongya, who had just been promoted to the Epsilon realm, showed a power that could destroy the world. When Bailey Chongqing heard this, he replied with a smile, "The more you say this, the more confident you seem." Zhang Yi saw a trace of regret on Bailey Chongqing's face. If his level of strength was similar to Zhang Yi's, then he could still strive for the position of captain. But now, he knew that his strength was far worse than Zhang Yi's. Zhang Yi was young and strong. If Zhang Yi got promoted, he might not have the chance to become a captain in his life. But at this moment, Zhang Yi's mouth showed a meaningful smile. Why? You just give up? Bailey Chongqing frowned and asked in surprise. What do you mean by that? Zhang Yi casually responded, okay, stop pretending. Don't you really want to be the captain yourself? Bailey Chongqing laughed. Maybe I had this idea at the beginning. But his expression became more serious as he continued to stare at Zhang Yi. The investigation team needs a strong person to lead. You are more qualified than me at present. The investigation team is a team walking on the edge of life and death. Although they are all elite, they dare not claim to be invincible in this doomsday world. In order to maintain the order of the entire Jiangnan region, they often have to face some unknown existence. They have personally sent off several teammates, such as their most powerful captain. At this time, the idea of struggling for power and profit can exist, but it must never override the survival of the group. Things are not what you think, Zhang Yi replied. In fact, my contribution in Yuan Kongye's death was apparently not the greatest. He looked at Bailey Chongqing's eyes seriously and said word by word, actually, it's your investigation team. Upon hearing this, Bailey Chongqing was shocked greatly, and an incredible expression appeared in his eyes. In fact, although their mission was completed this time, the death of Bian Junwu and Zhang Yi's first-class credit both hit them hard. But Zhang Yi actually said that they were the biggest contributors to the success of this operation. Zhang Yi, what do you mean? Everyone knows that it was you who killed Yuan Kongye. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had any way to deal with a mutant of the Epsilon level. Zhang Yi said to Bailey Chongqing calmly. But without you, I alone would have no way to defeat her. The most crucial thing was Bian Junwu's contribution. Moreover, the existence of the investigation team itself was an important force in restraining the Snow Worship sect. If it weren't for the fact that they were still in Tianhai City, Yuan Kongye would have started a large-scale purge of other forces long ago. Of course, Zhang Yi deliberately said this to Bailey Chongqing for his own purpose. Inwardly, he also believed this to be a fact. If it weren't for the recurrence of the side effects of Bian Junwu's supernatural power, it would be a bit difficult for me to kill Yuan Kongye. In general, Bian Junwu should be the first-class meritorious service. So I hope that my credit can be credited to him. Bailey Chongqing was shocked. He couldn't believe his ears at all. The disaster level in Tianhai City this time can even be evaluated as the highest A-level crisis at present. Zhang Yi is the biggest hero. If he goes to the Jiangnan district, the top leaders will definitely give him a very generous reward. He could obtain supplies, women, residences, genetic drugs, and a reputation in Blizzard City. These were all at his fingertips, but he easily gave them up. Wait, this is strange. He gave up so readily. Could it be that Bailey Chongqing was not stupid? After getting over his initial shock, he quickly thought about the reason of this matter in his mind. Not long after, he suddenly realized the obvious. You don't want to go to the Jiangnan regional headquarters. Zhang Yi stared at Bailey Chongqing, and the smile on his mouth became even stronger. With his arms folded, he leaned on the billiard table and replied calmly, it's convenient to deal with smart people. That's right, I don't want to go to Blizzard City. Bailey Chongqing was a little surprised, but when he thought about Zhang Yi's living conditions in Tianhai City, he felt it was understandable. The living conditions in that shelter were better than most areas in Blizzard City. And most importantly, it was in Zhang Yi's territory. It's better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of an ox. He was the king in Tianhai City, but once he goes to the Jiangnan district, no matter how high his level was, he would eventually be someone else's subordinate. Oh, I see. I get it now. The main purpose of your coming this time is to ask us to help you conceal the truth of this incident, so as to avoid being noticed and summoned by the Jiangnan district, right? Zhang Yi did not admit it readily. To negotiate, you must take the initiative in your own hands. Otherwise, the other party will definitely push forward and make more demands. So he crossed his arms with a sneer on his face. Not entirely. I don't have any resistance to Blizzard City. To be honest, Bian Junwu once suggested that I go there to try my luck, and I was quite tempted at first. But seeing how hard you guys fought for your lives, I hesitated, so I'm trying not to go if it can be helped. But Zhang Yi's eyes flashed with cold light, staring straight at Bailey Chongqing, and a sense of oppression suddenly rose from Bailey Chongqing. Zhang Yi said word by word, if I really go to Blizzard City, I must seek a captain's position. There are only a handful of captain-level mutants. Once Bian Junwu died, Bailey Chongqing's ability was barely enough to take on this position. But if Zhang Yi joins the team, Bailey Chongqing's chances will be slim. After all, his strength is far from being comparable to Zhang Yi's current strength. Zhang Yi came over and patted Bailey Chongqing's heavy shoulders. He said to him meaningfully, "I am very hesitant now. It's okay to go, but it's also better not to go. I have a fear of making choices when it came to matters like this. After all, it's a difficulty choice. So why don't you make this choice for me? Actually, it's better to put it this way. Do you want to continue to be the vice captain of the investigation team? Or do you want to be the captain?" Zhang Yi's words were clear enough. Of course, he saw through Bailey Chongqing's desire to be promoted. Bailey Chongqing was very moved when he heard this. Zhang Yi gave him such a good opportunity, so of course he wanted to be the captain. After all, the difference in treatment between the captain and the deputy captain was quite large. In the entire Blizzard City, there are a total of 6 captain-level figures, and they enjoy the A-level material distribution treatment of Blizzard City, second only to the commander-in-chief and a group of senior officials. Bailey Chongqing frowned and looked at Zhang Yi. The smile on his face slowly disappeared, and his expression was serious. "If headquarters finds out that we have concealed information from here, we will be severely punished. You see, the system of Blizzard City is militarized management with clear rewards and punishments." Zhang Yi frowned slightly and asked in surprise, "Conceal? Why conceal? When did I ask you to hide information from the top leaders of Blizzard City?" Of course, this question from Zhang Yi only confused Bailey Chongqing. Zhang Yi smiled cunningly. "Did you see me kill Yuan Kongye with your own eyes?" Bailey Chongqing was stunned. "That's not the case." Zhang Yi continued to ask, "Do you know my current level of strength?" Bailey Chongqing was stunned again, and shook his head after a moment of silence. "I don't know. If he didn't fight him in person, he certainly couldn't judge how strong Zhang Yi is now." But according to logic, Zhang Yi raised a finger and interrupted Bailey Chongqing. "We can't talk about logic, we need to talk about evidence. You can't be sure of what I said. So not reporting it cannot be considered as concealment." Although Zhang Yi's logic is a bit speechless, if you think about it carefully, there is nothing wrong with it. Bailey Chongqing was almost confused by Zhang Yi's logic. "Although I get what you're implying. But how was the mission of Tianhai City completed then? We still need to explain this." Zhang Yi made a slight gesture with his hand and replied that he'd also thought of an answer to this question for him. "The greatest credit should be given to the sacrificed Captain Bian." Zhang Yi thought of the time when Bian Junwu died in front of him. In fact, when Zhang Yi asked Bian Junwu to use the Ice Soul, Bian Junwu probably saw through Zhang Yi's thoughts. It's just that the situation was critical at the time and he had no other choice. Speaking of it, Zhang Yi still felt a little guilty about Bian Junwu's death. Not much, but still a little. Although he is a self-centered person, he is still unwilling to easily harm people who have no grudges against him, unless his life is threatened. "I would not pluck a hair to benefit the world, nor would I want the whole world to serve me." This is Zhang Yi's basic principle in dealing with people. So now, he decided to give the credit for killing Yuan Kongye to Bian Junwu. At least it would give his wife and children, whom he cared about so much, a better life. Without the influence of Bian Junwu's ability, Yuan Kongye would not have died. So Bian Junwu has made the greatest contribution. And Yuan Kongye's death was not caused by me. Instead, under the leadership of your investigation team, all the mutants in Tianhai City worked together to help Yuan Kongye's ability to be overconsumed, and the side effects of the ability broke out and she died. What do you think of this explanation? Zhang Yi told a story to himself. Bailey Chongqing sighed deeply after listening. You don't look like a warehouse manager, but a writer of online novels. Zhang Yi smiled mischievously. What a joke. Those who write online novels are all poor and would starve to death. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I can't control your thoughts, you decide what to do. Zhang Yi has already expressed his desire. He believes that Bailey Chongqing and the others will make the right choice. After all, no one will go against their own interests. At this moment, Bailey Chongqing finally understood why Zhang Yi put on an arrogant look as soon as he came there. He deliberately left a bad impression on the team members. Currently, none of them was unwilling to accept Zhang Yi as their captain. So now, as long as Bailey Chongqing goes back and uses his prestige in the team to guide them, the team members should agree to this matter readily. There is another key point here. Zhang Yi completely gave up this credit, so the credit will fall on the investigation team. The team members can also get generous rewards. Zhang Yi saw that Bailey Chongqing was moved. He knew that if nothing unexpected happens, then he had successfully made Bailey Chongqing his mouthpiece. Seeing that Bailey Chongqing was still thinking, Zhang Yi reached out and took out a black pistol from his alternate space. It was Bian Junwu's pistol, which was lent to him during the battle. The gun was specially made, and Bian Junwu's name was on it. Zhang Yi felt that he should return it. The key is that there is nothing special about the gun. What is special is the bullet inside. Bailey Chongqing saw Bian Junwu's pistol and couldn't help sighing. His old friend of many years just left forever. Zhang Yi looked at him and asked, "The bullet I used before was called the origin bullet, right?" Zhang Yi was very interested in the origin bullet. It could actually threaten high-level mutants, so of course he wanted this good thing. After all, among his means of attack, guns were very important. Bailey Chongqing glanced at Zhang Yi and said seriously, "Don't even think about it. Origin bullets are strictly controlled strategic materials even in the regional headquarters. I can't give it to you." Zhang Yi laughed. "Can't we talk about it?" Bailey Chongqing teased. "There is only one possibility for you to get the origin bullet. That is to join the headquarters and become a member of the investigation team." Zhang Yi smiled helplessly. Sure enough, as he thought, this kind of thing is not so easy to get. "Forget it. I won't sacrifice my future for a bullet." Then the matter is happily decided. "I'll go back first. See you if you have time." Zhang Yi paused here and changed his words. "Forget it. It's better for us not to meet again in the future." If he saw Bailey Chongqing again, it could only mean that something had happened again. Zhang Yi didn't want so many troubles again. He walked to the door and prepared to leave. Bailey Chongqing looked at Zhang Yi's back and suddenly stopped him. "Zhang Yi, you have such a strong power now. Are you really willing to live in a corner and be an ordinary person? In troubled times, you could have done something great." Zhang Yi said without looking back. "I'm not interested." He enjoys his current life and didn't want any change. Zhang Yi was too lazy to explain more to Bailey Chongqing. After all, everyone has a different way of living. However, the most important thing is to live a life you truly desire. Zhang Yi headed outside and planned to go back to the shelter. Xing Tian had been waiting for him outside. Seeing Zhang Yi on his way to his car, Xing Tian went over to greet him enthusiastically. "Old classmate, you guys are done talking already?" Zhang Yi replied calmly. "I just chatted with them about some things, and I came out after I was done." Zhang Yi didn't plan to talk to Xing Tian much, but Xing Tian smiled flatteringly. "Why don't you stay for dinner or something? Don't play tricks on me. If you have any problems in the future, just come to me. I will help you solve them if it is convenient. Of course, you and everyone in the base must listen to me. Do you understand?" Xing Tian smiled nonchalantly. "Power is very useful, but I was born not to be a leader. You are smarter and more powerful than me. I have nothing to worry about handing over the base to you." Xing Tian's greatest advantage was that he knows himself, so he was okay surrendering his base to Zhang Yi. At least there will be a big backer to rely on in the future. Zhang Yi said his goodbye and got inside his car. Now the 5 major forces in Tianhai City are almost wiped out, and their fighting power has plummeted. The surrounding cities must be eyeing the fat piece of meat of Tianhai City. "It's really troublesome." Zhang Yi exhaled. "The tree wants to be still, but the wind does not stop. Although I am not afraid of the threats from the surrounding cities, I am always fighting and cannot enjoy life. Now it seems that the existence of such a force in the Jiangnan district is indeed necessary and inevitable." The scene shifts and we are introduced to a shy race in an unspecified location of the ocean where the cold wind was like a knife, and the blurred dusk sunlight stays at the end of the sea and sky. The sea level was terribly cold and calm, leaving only the vast silence between heaven and earth. On the vast ice ocean, this huge icebreaker slowly approached. It has been drifting on the sea for several days. If it weren't for this huge icebreaker, it would never be able to traverse the deep sea in such a cold ice apocalypse. But at this time, there are few crew members on this huge icebreaker. However, the entire shy race has always been unmanned. Currently, artificial intelligence had replaced most of the work in the mechanical field. Inside the cabin, a woman, Mayumi Bambuchi, was wearing a Hashir Shrine Maiden costume, sitting at a round wooden table. In front of her was an ancient scroll. She was holding a brush with a goblin statue on the head, and dipping it into the ink in the box right next to her. But the ink was not black, but red as blood. A man in a newsboy cap half knelt in front of her, looked up and smiled and asked, "How is my fortune today?" The shrine maiden bowed respectfully to the man and said, "Good luck it seems." The man nodded with satisfaction and breathed a sigh of relief. "That's great. If we keep going this way, we will be able to land in the city called Linhai soon." He turned his head and looked at the sofa not far away. A man who was nearly 2 meters tall and as strong as a brown bear. But the man was wearing a black suit and flipping through a sailing magazine with his thick hands. The picture was somewhat incongruous. "Degongxiang, how far do we have to go?" The man named Degongxiang Yanjin didn't even raise his head and said, 3 days. The man in the newsboy cap raised his head with a smile and said with emotion, 3 days left, right? 3 days later, we will land in the place called Shenzhou. Then, write a legendary story that belongs to us. Meanwhile, the investigation team's mission in Tianhai City was over. Bailey Chongqing led the team back to Jinling, back to the super military fortress located on the east side of Jinling, which was built at a huge cost. The snow was all over the sky, and this gray super building was crawling on the ground like a beast. The tall city wall was more than 50 meters high, and every 3 meters there was a soldier with live ammunition and wearing black combat uniform guarding it. There was a tower every 10 meters, with a high-speed machine gun inside, with a firing rate of 6,000 rounds per minute, which could instantly tear apart all carbon-based organisms. This super fortress covering thousands of square kilometers began to be built decades ago. Bailey Chongqing and his team drove their car under the tall city wall, and after inspection, they drove into the heavy metal gate. Inside Blizzard City, a comprehensive militarization management was implemented there. After Bailey Chongqing and his team returned, the staff immediately came and took them for examination. These team members who fought outside needed to ensure that their physical condition was normal after returning, and they would not bring an unknown infection from the outside world. After a complicated examination, a young officer appeared in front of Bailey Chongqing and the team. He was wearing a neat brown military uniform, a neatly back hair, and a pair of expensive gold-rimmed glasses. After seeing Bailey Chongqing, he said, "Lieutenant Colonel Bailey, please follow me." Bailey Chongqing nodded and followed the young soldier. The identity of this soldier was not ordinary. He is the secretary of Zhu Zhang, the supreme commander of Jiangnan District Lan Xinqing. Born as a civilian, he has an extraordinary family background and is very trusted by Zhu Zhang. As usual, after they complete the assigned tasks and come back, they need to report the situation to Zhu Zhang in person. What's more, this time the problem in Tianhai City was more serious. After all, the death of a captain-level figure is enough to alarm the entire Blizzard City's top leaders. Although the entire team followed behind Lan Xinqing, Bailey Chongqing was the only one needed at the command center, Zhu Zhang's office. Lan Xinqing reported to Zhu Zhang through the communication device outside the office. After getting Zhu Zhang's affirmative answer, Lan Xinqing gestured for Bailey Chongqing to go ahead. Bailey Chongqing walked into Zhu Zhang's office. After Bailey Chongqing entered the door, he subconsciously glanced around. Commander-in-Chief. Saluting solemnly, Bailey Chongqing came to the office and stood behind Zhu Zhang at a distance. Zhu Zhang was about 50 years old, with gray hair and a thin body, but his face always had a steely look, and his eyes were as sharp as a hawk. Bailey Chongqing was slightly younger than Zhu Zhang, in his 40s with an ordinary appearance, wearing a pair of old-fashioned round glass lenses and a small braid behind his head. But Bailey Chongqing knew that this gentleman's strength was probably ranked among the top 3 in the entire Blizzard City. Zhu Zhang nodded at him with his hands behind his back. "You have done a great job on this mission. I originally thought that you would temporarily withdraw and let headquarters launch a devastating attack on Tianhai City." Zhu Zhang's tone showed that he didn't care much about Tianhai City. He already knew that almost all the people in Tianhai City died in the zombie tide, and only 1 out of 100 people survived. So this city can be completely abandoned. Bailey Chongqing replied at this moment. This operation was thanks to Team Captain Bien. If he hadn't sacrificed himself to contain the cult leader of the snow worship sect, I'm afraid we would have all died there, they reported to the headquarters before returning. As for the statements in the report, they were almost the same as what Zhang Yi said, just a little polished. But the main credit still went to their investigation team, especially Bien Junwoo. Hearing Bien Junwoo's name, Zhu Zhang couldn't help but show a trace of sadness on his face. Bien Junwoo was once a good soldier in the army. After the end of the world, he also made very important contributions to the Jiangnan region. His death was an irreparable loss for the Jiangnan region. Although he knew that this day would come sooner or later, Zhu Zhang couldn't help but feel sorry for it at this moment. He looked at Bailey Chongqing and waved at him. "Come sit down and let's talk." After the two sat down, Zhu Zhang continued to ask, "During your visit to Tianhai City, did you come across any good talents that you can bring to the headquarters for training?" Bailey Chongqing had already reported to Zhu Zhang by email, recounting everything about the various situations of the Tianhai City mission. So at this time, Zhu Zhang didn't talk about the mission anymore, but was very concerned about talented mutants. Although there are many talents in the Jiangnan regional headquarters, people are often sacrificed, resulting in insufficient income. Therefore, it is particularly important to absorb fresh blood from surrounding cities. Bailey Chongqing sat upright in the chair, and the first thing that came to his mind was the shadow of Zhang Yi. Currently, Zhang Yi's strength was definitely not inferior to that of Bien Junwoo. And putting aside his strength in terms of strategy and temperament, he is definitely worthy of attention. But according to the agreement between them, he cannot expose Zhang Yi's strength. After thinking for a while, Bailey Chongqing said to Zhu Zhang, "Tianhai City does have several powerful people. After our investigation, There are 7 people I think have the ability to join the investigation team. Xing Tian from Emerald Waterside Base, Xiao Honglian and Zhuge Qingting from Radiant Prosperity Base, Chun Jingguan from Morning Dew Base, and Zhang Yi, Liang Yu and Yang Mi from Zhang Yi's team. Most of these people are powerful combat characters. However, Yang Mi's ability is very strong in supporting the team. Zhu Zheng nodded slowly after listening. You have already said all this in your report. He crossed his hands casually and suddenly said, I am very interested in this young man named Zhang Yi. Can you tell me more about him? Bailey Chongqing was a little nervous and thought, sure enough, he is here.